Facts First presents Man who buried 42 school buses underground finally let cameras inside. Many people don't know this, but in a major Canadian city, one of the world's best-kept secrets lies beneath the ground. It was placed there by a man who has a unique vision. His project has inspired many, and he's also angered many, including local authorities. And when you hear his story and see what he's done, you might be inspired as well. Bruce Beach was born in 1934 in Kansas. He lived through the Vietnam War, the tensions of the Cold War. Finally, he and his wife decided to move to Canada. He wanted a safer environment for him and his wife. They believed that they could find the seclusion and safety they were looking for in Canada. Unfortunately, the move wasn't enough to calm his fears. In the late 70s, Bruce was worried about the rising threat between Russia and the United States. He was so concerned about it, he felt he needed to do something. If the bombs came down, he wanted to make sure that he would be safe. Rather than sitting around waiting for the bombs to fall, he decided to come up with an idea, and he came up with Ark Two. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to make Ark Two a reality. Bruce and his wife decided to move to her hometown in Canada, a small village called Hornings Mills. Their home is about 90 minutes from Toronto, and its scenic views and isolation made it the perfect place for them to live. The property was gorgeous and an ideal location for Bruce's plans. By 1980, he had already sketched out an elaborate blueprint of what he wanted the Ark Two to look like. Nobody knew it back then, but it would turn out to be one of the craziest and most interesting projects Ontario had ever seen. Bruce started his project by buying a bunch of old school buses. He was buying them for just $300 each. He didn't really care how well the engines were working or if they could move at all. As long as the structure was stable and sturdy, he wanted to buy them. He only wanted old school buses because they were more roomy and they had open floor plans. Also, slowly, by law, school buses had to have steel beams installed to reinforce the roof. That kept children safe while on the bus, and Bruce needed something strong enough to be covered with dirt. He managed to accumulate 42 buses. He stored them in a tightly packed formation in an old lot near his house. By 1985, just 5 years after he began the project, he was ready for Phase 2. When the buses were all in a tight formation on a large portion of his 12.5-acre property, he started the grueling process of cutting off the chassis to make them one massive interconnected structure with winding corridors, rooms, storage spaces, and bulkheads. It was a tremendous job, and Bruce couldn't do it all alone, so he found a group of volunteers who were willing to help. It wasn't a small job either. It took several weeks. It took Bruce and his team a few years, in fact, to complete the construction. When the chassis were removed and each bus was in its place, it was time to move on to the next step. Bruce needed to make sure that the buses were airtight, and he began pouring concrete over the enormous structure. He needed to be sure that it would remain encased forever, and that it was both thick and resilient. When the concrete was dry and set, he covered it with 14 feet of dirt. When he was done with that, the vast complex was almost invisible to people outside. When the structure was complete, it was time to get the inside ready, just in case disaster struck. The people who helped build the structure, they were guaranteed a spot in the Ark Two. If a bomb did hit, Bruce knew that he would need a decontamination chamber for the radiation. So he installed a double sink, a shower, and a food contamination area. That was placed right at the entrance to make sure anyone who entered would be free of contaminants. He also included an industrial septic tank and access to a private well with portable drinking water. The diesel generators were capable of running for 3 months before they needed to be refilled. Bruce also made sure that everyone who ended up in the Ark Two would be well fed. He installed 2 industrial kitchens. One would be for cooking, the other would be for washing dishes. He also added a large storage room for food. Stocking it wasn't easy. Even food with a long shelf life had to be replaced many times over the years. He planned to allow 500 people into his Ark, and some of them would be children. So he built classrooms for them, a library, a day room, a radio communication center, a mortuary, even a dentist's office, all inside his Ark Two underground. He would make sure everyone was well taken care of for years if necessary. Although Bruce made it clear that the locals would be welcome if disaster struck, the local authorities weren't all that happy about it. They've tried many times to shut his project down. Since he didn't build it with permits, the authorities took him to court over 30 times. The fire department also has a problem with Bruce and his Ark Two. They say that it's a fire hazard. Somehow, Bruce has managed to keep the doors open, though. In the end, Bruce is proud of what he's accomplished. He knows that if disaster does strike, or if we go to war, he's going to be safe, along with his wife and the volunteers. He believes being able to save 500 people during a catastrophe, that's reason enough to fight for the existence of Ark Two. He buried 42 school buses underground, finally let the cameras inside, and it is incredible what you see. What do you think? Could you survive 3 months underground in a Ark Two like this? Would you want to, or would you want to go ahead and just have the radiation knock you off? Tell us in the comments below, and subscribe for more.